Okay, so movement 3, question 14 is the first one, and the bars are bars 1 to 26. So make sure you can find them in your score. It's page 51, 52, 53, and 54, up to halfway across 54. Those are your pages that you need. Okay, so first question. Which type of non-harmonic note is frequently used as part of the melody? So if you want to give this a go, then you need to pause the video and try it out and then come back and I'll talk through it. If you aren't sure what you should be looking for or thinking about, then carry on listening. So first of all, what is a non-harmonic note? Well, it's a note that isn't part of the standard diatonic harmony in whatever key you're in. Generally, it can still form a chord, but it's something that is outside of what is expected and it breaks the sequence or pattern of the main melody. The two ones that you should be really familiar with are passing notes and auxiliary notes. So a passing note is when that little extra note is joining the gap between two notes, so it is passing between them. So the melody moves by step to a passing note and then continues by step to a different note afterwards. An auxiliary note is a note that comes away and returns back to the original note. So the note before and the note after the auxiliary note are the same note. So it steps away or it leaps away and then returns. Now, if that's helped you, go and have a look. If you're still not sure, then I'm going to talk you through it. You should really know that for movement 3, one of the key characteristics of this movement and of this melody is the fact that it uses lots of auxiliary notes. So the answer is an auxiliary note. You should know that. If we look at the score, we are talking about all of these guys that step away. So you can see that the note before them and the note afterwards, and it's obviously it's doubled lower down as well. You can see that the note before and after is the same. So in this top part, we've got A, B, A, G sharp, A. So the B is an auxiliary note that's moved up a step and then back to the A, and the G sharp is an auxiliary note that has moved away chromatically and then returned to the A afterwards. So both are auxiliary notes. The B is just a standard auxiliary note and the G sharp is a chromatic auxiliary note, and you should really know that already. So that is the correct answer. Next question, we're stating in full the key at bar 13. So I'm going to show you that on the screen now. I'm not giving it away yet. Obviously, that's the first thing you should do is find the bar. So it's this one here. Now, if you want to give this a go, pause the video. If you want some pointers, keep listening. So for finding the key of any one bar, you need to be looking at the key signature. The key signature is going to give you a strong indication, but we do know that it might not be the immediately obvious choice. So this key signature is an F sharp and a C sharp, which would tell us it's D major if it's a major key. However, that key signature would still stand if we were in the relative minor or if we had modulated within the music. So in order to determine whether that's happened, you are looking for added accidentals. If you're in the relative minor, you will have the added seventh of the relative minor. So for D major, the relative minor is B minor. The seventh note of B minor is an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So we'd be looking for A sharps and preferably leading notes, so A sharps leading to Bs. And that would show us that we're definitely in B minor rather than D major. We also obviously could have modulated, so added accidentals would be added if we had briefly moved into a different key. So for example, if we'd gone to the dominant of A, we'd expect to see added G sharps. So looking at this bar, we haven't got any added accidentals in this bar. We haven't got added accidentals actually on any part of this score, so bars 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's going to give us a really strong indication that we should go with our key signature telling us it's D major, but we want to double check. Within the bar itself, what chord do we have? We look at the bass note. Now the bass note is a B. And that's probably been done deliberately because it's trying to throw us off track, because it's a B, oh well, it's B minor. Although it's not, because if it was B minor, we'd have added A sharps. And the note following the B is an A that is not sharpened. We've also got plenty of A's elsewhere, quite prominent A's. And they are not A sharps. So going back to the chord in bar 13, we've got a B, we've also got D's and G's. I'm not looking at any of my transposing instruments because I can't be bothered, I don't have time for that. So the notes we've got at the start of bar 13 are B's in the bass, D's and G's. So B, D, G. Try and form a triad with those notes. Hopefully what you're coming up with is a G chord, G, B, D. Now B is in the bass, but that's fine, it just means it's in first inversion. So is a G major chord a diatonic chord of D major? If we think we're in the key of D major, would a chord of G fit? A chord of G is the subdominant, so yes, it would definitely fit. It's primary harmony, so it's what we'd expect. It's not chord 5, which is A, or chord 1, which is D, but it's chord 4, so it's a strong chord. And we also know that Haydn quite liked to put chord 4 into inversions. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy with it being in D major. If you are unsure for any reason, you could also look forwards to the end of that phrase, to the end of that section, where you've got your A here that I'd highlighted before. So that's a chord 5. And then you're ending on a D, which is the tonic chord, which is D major. So yes, you need to look at bar 13, but you also need to look at the full section just to confirm your choice. But we're in D major, and if we know our stuff about the symphony, we should know that that is the key of the third movement, and it's also the key of the whole symphony. So, you know, D major is quite a biggie. We've got horns in D. That's how big of a deal it is. Right. Next question is the one that's in the grid. Diminished chord, root position, perfect cadence in B minor, chromatic auxiliary note. Well, that should be easy. Let's start with a diminished chord. If you think you know how to do that, pause the video and then come back to check. If you're not sure about a diminished chord, then carry on listening. So for a diminished chord, you're looking for a chord where an interval between two of the notes has been diminished, which means it has decreased or it's been reduced. So you've taken the interval and you've brought the interval closer together. You've brought the notes closer together. So generally, it means that the lower of the two notes has been raised, and that's closed the gap. It's made it a smaller gap. But it also, depending on what key you're in and how it's been written, it could be that the higher note of the interval has been flattened or naturalized in order to reduce the gap. Either way, the thing that you are going to be looking for is added accidentals. Once you can see your added accidentals, you're then going to check the intervals between the notes. So if that's helpful, you can go and have a look and pause the video. But what I'll do now is I'll go through it myself and show you where to find them. We already know that we're going to have lots of added accidentals because we've got all of these auxiliary notes, these chromatic auxiliary notes. The chords on those chromatic auxiliary notes almost certainly will be diminished because they're moving chromatically, and the effect of that is that you reduce the standard interval. Let's just check one with my little highlighter. So this is the first one I'm going to go for, the G sharp. We've got a G sharp and an E sharp, and the fact that we can see an E sharp, immediately alarm bells should be ringing. We've got Ds. So we've got Ds, E sharps, G sharps. That definitely sounds like a chord. It isn't a standard triad. It's been played around with, and the distance between the E and the G sharp that we would normally have as a major third has been reduced because the E has been sharpened. So any of these chords that are built using the auxiliary notes are quite possibly going to be diminished chords. I think it is more likely on the exam that they would ask you for a diminished seventh. Now, a diminished seventh chord is you're following the same principle that you're looking for a reduction in the interval, but that you have got a fourth note in your chord. So you've got the triad and you've got the seventh. I quite like diminished sevenths. I feel that they're just a sort of stronger answer. And like I said, I think OCR is more likely to ask you that because it's a stronger, clearer chord and it's a more specific compositional technique. These auxiliary notes, the fact that they're creating diminished chords is almost by the by. It's just part and parcel of the fact that you've got this auxiliary note. It's not a strong chord, whereas a diminished seventh is a really sort of purposeful, strong dissonance within the music. If we look forwards, if we look at this first section here, there aren't any added accidentals, which is our first port of call, apart from at the end, which is bar 10. And that's actually exactly the same chord that we had before. So that is a diminished chord, technically. We've got that reduced interval between the E sharp and the G here. But I want a diminished seventh, and it's not got the seventh note, it's only got three notes in that chord, D's, E sharps and G sharps. So I'm going to carry on looking. So this section, well, I've already just analysed that section and I know there aren't any added accidentals in it. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to take myself over here, and this is, we have to look now at the full page. And if I start scanning along, immediately I'm going to see here added accidentals. Okay, so I'm going to work out what notes I've got here in this chord. So I've got A sharps. Let me look at the bottom. I've got a C, but the key signature is a C sharp, so that's a C sharp. Well, immediately an A sharp to a C sharp, I like that. That's a diminished interval because we normally expect to have an A followed by a C sharp, and it's an A sharp followed by a C sharp, so the gap has been closed. The gap has been diminished or reduced. Ignoring violas, don't like violas, too complicated. We've got an E here in the violin too, that's lovely. So we've got A sharp here, C sharp in the bass, E's. If we keep looking up, the bassoons are playing C sharps as well. So our notes are A sharp, C sharp, E. If we want a diminished seventh, we need the added seventh on top. We need a fourth note in the chord, and the one that is a G, because we would go A, C sharp, E, G. That would be a dominant seventh, but the fact that we've sharpened the A and reduced that interval to an A sharp, C sharp, and then an E and a G, that would create a diminished seventh chord. So I'm looking for a G. Lo and behold, look what we've got here. The second oboe, hurrah, it's always the oboes, best instrument, has got a G, and that's giving a really lovely dissonant clash with oboe 1. So those two tones are going to really sort of create a lovely dissonance there, and then it resolves outwards. So the A sharp played by oboe 1 is moving up to a B, and the G, the seventh, is falling downwards, resolving downwards to the F sharp. So that's perfect. So that is a diminished seventh chord, and that is the one that I would choose to use. Looking forwards, because this is a pattern, A sharp, B, C sharp, D, I'm going to guess that this chord as well, so bar 18, beat 3, has also got a diminished seventh chord, but I don't have time to look and check. I only need one for my answer. So, bar 17, beat 3, that's my diminished seventh chord. But as I said, the question technically just asked for a diminished chord, so it's any of those places where you've got that reduced interval due to the chromatic auxiliary note. Don't need to look on this page because we've got an answer. Okay, a root position perfect cadence in B minor. If you know what you're looking for, pause the video. If you're not 100% sure, then I'll talk through what you should look for. So root position perfect cadence, that's giving us a lot of information. This should be fairly straightforward. Most perfect cadences are in root position because it strengthens the key. In B minor, we're going to have an F sharp chord followed by a B minor chord. Don't forget it's F sharp, not F, because we've got F sharps in the key signature. That's going to be pretty easy. So we can just scan our bass line for an F sharp followed by a B. Easy peasy. It's just a case of finding where. If you want to give it a go yourself, do so, or if not, carry on watching and I will show you how to find it. So if we look at our first page section, we are not going to be successful finding F sharps and Bs because we have just got Ds, we've just got tonic notes, and they are in octave leaps. Bum, 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 bum. Sorry, that D is pretty far away from my comfort zone. So we'll move on. We've already established that here, because this was the question for bar 13, that we're in D major still, and we've got a nice finish in D major there. So I'm not going to bother looking at that page at all. I'm going to focus on this page. Whee! It's much easier to do a straight line when it's vertical, as you might be able to tell. Okay, I've already just been looking at my lovely diminished seventh chords and my little chromatic thing going up here. I've already seen that I've got A sharps rising to Bs. So my brain is already going, okay, well, A sharp is the sharpened seventh in B minor. So it's likely that on this page I've gone into the relative minor. And also, you know, we've established the tonic in the first section. We're now moving into a different key. That's pretty standard. So I am going to be scanning my bass line here, which is my cellos, which is nice because I don't have to transpose anything. I'm going to be scanning for an F sharp, and then I want it to be followed by a B. Now, for those of you that can't read the bass clef fluently yet, I would personally just work out where my F sharp is and just scan along that line. And where you need to be looking is the second line from the top or the space underneath the stave, because remember, you've got to cover both octaves. And I would start scanning along from this point, yada, 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 stop. Here we have an F sharp. What's the note that's after it? It's a B. Okay? And that's the end of the first little phrase. It's not surprising that if he has modulated into the relative minor and it's in B minor, that he would put a perfect cadence there. If we look up at the top of the melody, we've got our A sharp leading to a B there. It's a minim. Hurrah, hurrah. I'm pretty certain that is going to be a B minor chord. Let's check the other notes. Yes, we've got lots of Bs. If we look at oboe 2, we've got a D, giving us the third. We've got a B in the bassoon part. Yes, so that is a B minor chord, and we're going to double check that the chord before it, oh, I shouldn't have gone upwards, it's easier to go down. Let's double check that that is chord 5. So chord 5 in B minor would be an F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and yes, we've got an A sharp at the top. If we check for C sharps, I'm sure there'll be a C sharp somewhere in this chord. Yes, the violas. Don't like having to read the viola clef, but at least it's easy to see what a C is because it's the middle line. So we've got our root position perfect cadence, which is bar 17, 18, 19, beat 3, into bar 20, beat 1. And remember that when it's a cadence, you do have to put both in order to get the mark. I don't know whether they give half marks. I assume they don't, which would mean that you'd get nothing, even though you technically found it. So when it's a cadence, it's, you know, a cadence by definition is 2 chords. So that's an important one. Great, we found it. We can move on. Okay, last question. It's asking us to find a chromatic auxiliary note. Now this should be really easy. We've talked about this a lot, and it was also question A. All you need to do is go and select your chromatic auxiliary note from the melody. Hopefully you can go and do that already. If you want me to just show you how I've done it, keep watching. So we're looking for chromatic movement that steps away and returns, as we've discussed. The one I would personally go for would be that G sharp. So it's bar 3, beat 3. Remember that you have to count the first bar, even though it's an anacrusis and not a full bar, that still counts as bar 1. So the first full bar here is actually bar 2. This bar is bar 3. Whoops. So I would personally pick that one. It is beat 3 of bar 3. It's my chromatic auxiliary note because it's moved from an A to a G sharp and back again, and that's a chromatic movement because it's a semitone. So that one's easy. I don't think you would get a sort of question that's really repeated a previous answer, but maybe in this section there wasn't much else to ask about harmonically. Okay, so if you've got to this slide, these are the answers written down. The type of non-harmonic note that's used frequently is an auxiliary note. I put chromatic in brackets because a lot of the time it is a chromatic auxiliary note, but sometimes it isn't chromatic because the step isn't a semitone, it's a tone. So for example, when it goes up to the B and back to the A again, that's not chromatic, but it's an auxiliary note nonetheless. We established that the key at bar 13 was D major. And then within the following bars, the features that we found were, oh, I've just noticed that it says within bars 114 to 122. That's not correct, is it? Let's ignore that bit. I'll change it. This is where we can put our diminished chords. So it's basically all the time you've got those chromatic auxiliary notes. But the one that we liked the best, which is actually the diminished 7th, and I think that's more likely to have been what you'd be asked to find, is bar 17 beat 3. And there was another one, but remember you only need to put one. So there was another one the following bar. The perfect cadence in B minor, we found that one, we established that quite quickly. And then finally, the answer that I would give for your chromatic auxiliary note would be in bar 3, the one that moves to the G sharp and back again. So those are the answers to question 14.